half an hour, financial reports from the City and Business Daily. Before that, the Parliament programme presented by Sue Cameron. It's 12 o'clock.
Hello and welcome to Westminster. The government are thought to have decided to save money for poll tax changes by postponing their community care programme for the sick and elderly. We look at the row this will cause among Tory supporters of the scheme. Also, Cecil Parkinson condemns a fellow minister for his foolish remark, and government plans for more controls on estate agents. There are renewed fears this morning that the government is about to announce a delay in implementing its proposals for community care in order to avoid damaging increases in the poll tax in the run-up to a general election. Government plans for community care are in the bill that received royal assent 10 days ago. At the heart of community care is the proposal to transfer responsibility for the elderly and mentally ill to local authorities in April 1991. The cost of implementing the scheme would be £830 million. Of that money, £370 million would come from the existing social security budget. The rest, £460 million, is new money, funded partly by Treasury grants, partly by locally raised money, the poll tax. It would mean an average increase of £15 a head in the poll tax in England and Wales. Ministers don't want to see that. Indeed, Environment Secretary Chris Patten is seeking to lower the poll tax before the next general election, so community care may be delayed. Well, with me now is Jerry Hayes, a Conservative member of the Social Services Select Committee. Jerry Hayes, wouldn't it be sensible for the government to postpone this in order to keep poll tax down?
Well, certainly not. Poll tax is not the most important thing in the world. We're talking about a scheme which has been welcomed by all the directors of social services, which will help elderly people. For once, will give them a real care package which they've never had before. We're talking about £15 per person. That's 30 pence a week. To sacrifice this because of that would be utterly ludicrous, and I shouldn't think the Department of Health will be particularly pleased either.
But when many people in the Conservative Party see the political imperative as doing something to keep down poll tax levels.
No, I don't think so at all. The political imperative must be to put into force that legislation, one, which is popular, and two, which is desperately needed. Care in the community, the Griffiths proposals, is popular and is desperately needed. We must have it.
If it is postponed, what will be the impact on the elderly?
It's very difficult to say, but for years, and don't forget this report was published in 1987, for years we have been saying time and time again, look, elderly people don't have a proper care package. There is a diffusion of responsibility between the Department of Health, Department of Social Services, local authorities. Now, the government's proposal, which Ken Clarke fought very, very hard for, it's now on the statute book. The government's proposal says simply, look, we will give it all the responsibility to local authorities. This is what it's all about. It's welcomed. And if the government says, or this particular cabinet committee says the reason it's being delayed is because local authorities are not ready, I don't think that's right, because a recent report has come out to say that 95 of 96 local authorities are ready. There's really no excuse for this.
Some experts are claiming that a few local authorities, though, aren't ready. Wouldn't it be wiser to phase it in slowly?
No, not at all. In local government, as in the health service, you have to have targets, you have to have goals. Otherwise you talk. If this is delayed, it will mean when eventually it is resurrected, as it's got to be, because we can't continue with the present mess that we've got in social services for the mentally handicapped and for the elderly, it will mean an even larger poll tax than £15. It will also mean there will be a major row just when the government is doing well in the opinion polls. We don't want it.
Jerry Hayes, thank you very much indeed. Well, from one row in Prospect to another in the Chamber. Here's Nicholas Woolley.
The Transport Secretary, Cecil Parkinson, faced a two-pronged attack over airline security. The opposition was naturally eager to take advantage of the Junior Education Minister Robert Jackson's gaffe at Heathrow last week. In his frustration at the delays caused by security inspections, he suggested sarcastically that his ministerial dispatch box had a bomb in it. More serious was the dummy bomb smuggled on board an aircraft at Heathrow last week by Dr. Jim Swire, one of the leaders of the relatives of the victims of the Lockerbie bombing. The radio containing the fake bomb was found in one of the random checks by which 10% of all hold baggage is inspected, but the bomb wasn't discovered. Mr. Parkinson said the official investigator reckoned the security lapse was understandable.
His conclusions are that it is beyond reasonable doubt that British Airways were aware that Dr. Swire and his travelling companion were relatives of Lockerbie victims when they bought their tickets, when they checked in, when their whole baggage was searched, and when they were on the flight, and that there are grounds for believing that British Airways staff, knowing who Dr. Swire was, were insufficiently stringent in checking the radio.
The explanation he's given is a singularly silly one and a singularly worrying one. Is he seriously suggesting that we should accept that the fact that someone is known to the authorities means that they therefore are safe? Could not a device actually be planted on someone on just that premise?
The radio was found. He admitted that he had packed his bag himself. These are his words, not mine. What happened was that the person investigating realized who he was and, as I've said, is open to criticism for not taking such stringent measures she might otherwise have done. But she did see the suitcase, she did see the radio, he did confirm that he'd packed it. So there was no question of Dr. Swire being duped.
Bearing in mind that my constituents have an unenviable job to do, does my right honourable friend agree that those opposite who seek to score cheap party points off an issue like this should first of all tell my constituents whether or not my constituents should show some humanity and some compassion to somebody who has so tragically lost a daughter?
As one who travelled on an aircraft some years ago on which there was a live bomb, could I ask the Secretary of State if he is aware that several people have already served prison sentences for carrying dummy or hoax bombs onto aircraft and into airdromes and airports? Should there not therefore be a common standard of justice to ensure that we have an end to the nonsense which was perpetuated at Heathrow all of last week, where intercontinental flights were delayed by as much as 3 hours?
Why wasn't the radio picked up by the X-ray machine when the hand baggage goes through? And if you will forgive me for raising this, what action is he taking about a parliamentary Under-Secretary of Education who disgracefully said a bomb was in his red box?
This was not hand baggage. This was in fact hold baggage, and this was detected as part of the 10% of the hold baggage that is searched on these selected aircraft. On the second point, my honourable friend has already made clear that he regrets this incident. But could I just point out that the same rules were applied to him as would be applied to anyone else. When he made his foolish remark about his case being full of bombs, the supervisor was immediately called. He was taken to a private part of the examination area, and he was asked to repeat the remark, and he didn't. He retracted. Had he repeated that remark, the police would have been informed and he would have been interviewed by them. Honourable members like to know that last year there were more than 700 of these incidents at Heathrow and Gatwick alone where jokesters, members of the public, made these claims the first time and then withdrew them when pressed. The point I'm making is that the rules that apply to my honourable friend are the rules that apply to anybody who travels who makes that sort of foolish remark.
Both the Commons and the Lords were concerned by the recent ruling of the European Court that British courts do have the power to set aside British law on fishing quotas while a case is heard. Originally, Spanish fishermen taking advantage of British quotas asked for such an injunction. And there are still worries about foreign vessels being allowed to register in Britain so as to benefit from British fish quotas. An SLD backbencher spoke up for Cornwall.
I'm sure the Secretary of State is aware that there is great concern amongst Cornish fishermen in particular regarding this, both following recent UK cheating on quota, but most specifically after the problems with the Spanish vessels. I hope that the government will resist any review all the way along the line and will fight on behalf of those fishermen to ensure the protection of the quota system. After all, it makes no sense at all to have a national quota system if this quota hopping is allowed to take place.
Mr. Speaker, as the honourable gentleman knows, what the European Court of Justice decided was that our courts could give interim injunctions against suspending an Act of Parliament. It didn't decide that they had to. The government will therefore be arguing that case before our own courts, arguing that although they have the discretion, they shouldn't use it. And we will be arguing very strongly the major case that our registration arrangement should be allowed under European law. So we will be fighting both cases very, very hard indeed.
Does he nevertheless accept that 31 of these former Spanish vessels are now back on our register through what is widely regarded as a loophole in the present registration procedure, namely that they appear to be financed through loans or mortgages from Spain? Would he look at this particular problem, and would he, at the end of the day, give an assurance that the government will do everything, absolutely everything in its part, to try and deal once and for all with this scourge of quota hopping?
As the honourable, my honourable friend knows, there were originally more than 85 of these vessels which applied for registration. But we are examining each case very, very carefully, and we are determined that only properly owned vessels will be allowed to register on our register.
An attempt is to be made to compel broadcasters to follow certain kinds of programmes with a brief discussion presenting differing views. Or they would have to put out another programme of equal length but with a differing standpoint within a month. The move to bring in these rules comes in the form of an amendment to the Broadcasting Bill in committee in the Lords tomorrow. One of the proposers is Conservative Lord Orr Ewing, who is supported by two backbench colleagues and independent peer Lord Wyatt. They're worried about what they regard as one-sided programmes and say they are seeking impartiality. One broadcasting executive has already said such rules would make broadcasting unbearably dull and stifled. Lord Orr Ewing complains that broadcasters' required standards of impartiality have slipped. And earlier, I put it to him that the amendment would make it impossible to do live interviews because broadcasters wouldn't know in advance what the interviewee might say.
If in fact a person gave a very one-sided one, they're generally quite honestly, when you ask a person to the studio, you know very well what their viewpoints are likely to be.
You don't know what they're going to say till they're right.
No, no. But I mean, if they then gave a very biased viewpoint, the editor would quite rightly say, well, we're going to give another opportunity to hear the other side of this story.
In a month's time.
In a month's time, or next week.
What do you do when there are, as there very often are in politics, umpteen different points of view? Who decides?
Well, it has to be an editorial decision, and I think the public, by and large, you know, they know what is a biased programme. They know that...
so you would still leave it up to editors, actually, but surely you started off...
The editor must in the end...
Complaining, though, that standards have slipped?
And the management. The management and the editors. By putting this into the bill instead of into the codes of conduct, because very strict codes of conduct, I've got books of them, both for the IBA and the BBC, they're very strict, and they lay down exactly what you should do to provide a balanced programme to honour the due impartiality. Unfortunately, they aren't obeyed. I mean, they're just totally neglected.
So would that mean that people would end up having court cases?
I hope not.
Saying we didn't have a right to reply against a Tory attack or vice versa?
I suppose in extremis you would go to court, but it's a very expensive and long drawn-out business. I think you want to strengthen the management control over the rather difficult producers who have become prima donnas, I think. I mean, they're very important national people. And you have to, I think, control the management, help the management control.
What happens when you have perhaps 3 or 4 parties who all want to give a point of view on a particular subject?
Well, then space could be found. I don't think, you see, if you divorce them a long time, people don't remember, and it won't be the same people seeing the programme. That's why there's a lot of advantage in saying, and next week on this series, we're going to have another point of view.
And you don't think it could make for boring party political broadcast type television?
Oh, well, one party, if it's all one party, then it is very boring. I mean, party political broadcasts are very boring, the lowest of the low in audience enjoyment, aren't they? So why have a biased program if a party political broadcast is the most biased of all, which doesn't attract a big audience? So I think a difference, a clash of view, and another view following on would be much better and much better entertainment.
The Social Security Bill returned to the Commons last night, much changed from the form in which it was sent to the Lords. The Upper House had made no less than 93 amendments to the bill, including 13 against the wishes of the government. But proceedings started with a government motion to guillotine the entire debate to only 3 hours. The opposition waived their right to a full debate on the guillotine, but did register strong objections.
Frankly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to circumvent debate to 3 hours on all of the Lord's amendments makes a mockery of the principle of adequate parliamentary debate. To do so when one of those groups of amendments has huge financial implications, strikes at the heart of our further and higher education system, and has never previously been debated in this House at all, is by any standards an outrage.
I think that the House of Commons is right to object strongly and loudly at the sort of treatment it's getting this evening. And if we don't do that, what will happen is this trend will get worse. And I don't know whether it's the Department or whether it's the Leader of the House who keeps saying, well, don't worry, we'll slip this through in 3 hours. We did it last year, we got away with it. And we only had 1 or 2 court cases to clear up as a result. But don't worry about that. We've got to get a timetable through. I think this is a scandalous way to treat legislation like this. And I think if the House didn't take the opportunity to say this very briefly at this stage in this debate, then it would be a great disgrace and a great disservice to this House of Commons.
First came the Lords' attempt to restore benefits to deaf students and a concession from the government.
Deputy Speaker, we've considered carefully the concerns expressed within Parliament, both Houses, and those put forward by organisations representing deaf people. As a result, I'm pleased to report to the House that we propose to consult the local authority associations on draft regulations which will preserve the income support and housing benefit entitlement of students who are entitled to a disabled students allowance by reason of deafness.
But the government would not give way over general student rights to housing benefits.
And what these amendments would in practice do would be to prevent the government withdrawing students' entitlement to housing benefit from the next academic year. This means that students would have access not only to a grant, to a top-up loan, to the access funds and to any parental assistance, but in addition they would also continue to have access to housing benefit. And I should make it clear straight away that the government believes it would be both undesirable and unnecessary for students to fall back on the benefit system under the new funding arrangements coming into force in September.
Surely the test is whether their income is above the eligibility for housing benefits. What the government's doing by trying to reject the Lord's Amendment is to make a special category of people who, irrespective of their level of income, will not be eligible for housing benefits.
Some students could, under the scheme he's proposing, be left destitute. And why doesn't he cover the possibility of that, as unanimously the advisory committee recommended, by providing for a safety net below which no student should be allowed to fall?
There exists a safety net already. There's power for local education authorities to pay hardship payments in those circumstances, and that seems to me a better way, more educationally attuned to the needs of students rather than the generality of the population, than turning to the social security system, which is designed for an entirely different purpose.
The opposition strongly repudiates the government's attempt at this very late stage of this bill to remove students from housing benefit entitlement. It is particularly obnoxious that this is being done when this proposal was not contained in the original bill. It has not previously been debated in this House, and it is being inserted even before the government's proposed student loan scheme is in place.
The sort of people we're hitting are like constituents of mine who are, and I make no apology for returning to this, hit by the community charge, suddenly find that their student sons and daughters are faced with the prospect of entering their earning life substantially in debt, who are not able, because of the increased burdens on themselves, to give those student sons and daughters what they would like, and now they are not eligible for this, and those sons and daughters themselves have also got, albeit 20%, some of the community charge to find.
But the government won that battle too.
The ayes to the right, 306. The noes to the left, 218.
A pamphlet out this morning by the Labour Campaign for Electoral Reform aims to put further pressure on the leadership to adopt electoral reform in the party's next manifesto. To date, Labour, like the Conservatives, has supported the first-past-the-post electoral system. But a growing number of its influential MPs, including frontbencher Robin Cook and spokesman Anne Clwyd and Jeff Rooker, are in favour of change. A few moments ago, I spoke to Jeff Rooker.
Well, basically, we're asking for the Labour Party to look at the alternatives to the present voting system in this country for the House of Commons, and that we'd have a system where the votes that people cast are more broadly represented by the MPs who are elected. It doesn't have to be perfect proportionality, but a much better system than now, where we have a government which is a minority government on 42% of the votes, and it has 58% of the MPs. That's not fair, and it's not democratic either.
But you're only at present asking the Labour Party to look at proportional representation, although it's what you would like to see.
Oh yes, but the Labour Party is committed to looking at different electoral systems for the Scottish Assembly, the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Assembly, the English regional assemblies we're going to set up, the replacement for the House of Lords and the European Parliament. All these will not have first past the post, a single X on the ballot paper.
But isn't it the case that the Labour policy review did not come out in favour of proportional representation for Westminster? Doesn't this mean that there is something of a split in the Labour Party on this?
No, there's not a split at all on this. I mean, the Labour NEC does have this approach, if you might say, a bipartisan approach with the Tories to keeping first past the post for the House of Commons. The Labour Party has never really had a consultation, a review of the system. We have in Scotland, and we've come out for something different for the Scottish Parliament. All we're asking for is in our reviews of the other electoral systems, which we will introduce. We've got PR for Northern Ireland, which Labour introduced for the Euro elections. We actually want the House of Commons to be, if you like, thrown into the discussion pot so that we can discuss that as well, because it doesn't seem democratic to leave it out.
Aren't you to some extent flying a kite for Labour to see what the response is, and if you get three hearty cheers all round, then you might incorporate it into party policy?
Oh, no. First of all, we know the majority of constituency Labour parties voted for a review last year, but because of the way we vote a party conference, it wasn't carried. Not enough trade unions supported. This year, more trade unions are supporting the call, not for a particular system, not for the party to commit itself to one thing or another, but for the party to commit itself to a review, to a Speaker's Conference after the next election to look at alternatives to the present electoral system.
There are signs that house prices have begun to bottom out and that first-time buyers are returning to the market. At least that's what the estate agents say. But can you trust an estate agent? And after allegations of gazumping and sharp practices in the industry, the government asked estate agents to draw up a voluntary code of practice. But Trade Minister Lord Trefgarne told fellow peers yesterday that following the breakdown of talks, the government was considering tightening regulations. Lord St John of Fawsley took up the point.
While I welcome the proposals to penalise the worst abuses practiced by a minority of estate agents, isn't the only long-term solution to the problem to transform a state agency into a properly regulated profession with qualifications for entry? And while the government is considering that, would my noble friend also consider whether written offers to purchase property should not be made binding?
We think that the way to proceed would have been by an agreed code of practice, if we could have achieved that. It was a matter of regret that the Director General of Fair Trading was not able to achieve that. But I think the way forward now proposed by means of a range of regulations listing, among other things, undesirable practices, will curb most of the abuses which are concerning, and rightly concerning, my noble friend.
I don't understand the point made by the noble Lord in his supplementary regarding a written acceptance being treated as a contract. If that was written into the law, it would stop some of the unfortunate gazumping, which in the main very often accepts young first-time buyers, and it may also act as a brake on some of the undesirable inflationary spirals that we've seen in house building, house purchase in the past 2 or 3 years.
Responsibility for the sort of practices which the noble Lord has referred to rests with individual parties involved in the transaction. Estate agents, of course, are sometimes drawn in
through their common law obligation to pass on all offers to their clients. But I don't think necessarily that the solution to the problem lies, for example, in regulating the profession in the way which my noble friend suggested.
In Scotland, the system of buying land, heritable property, has virtually put an end to gazumping. Now, is our methods being carefully considered by whatever committee it is that's looking at this point at the present time?
There is no legal impediment to the use of the Scottish system in England and Wales. However, the certainty which it offers to prospective vendors and purchasers is to some extent offset by other disadvantages.
Well, that's all from us for today. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. So until then, goodbye.
To start the day with the latest news from around the world, breakfast with the Channel 4 Daily at 7 and 8 each weekday morning. Next this afternoon, the latest trading details and news from around the world and an update on city prices with Susanna Simons and Business Daily.
The new boss starts today, boys.
We needed an insider for this job.
What? Like yourself?
He's got an impressive track record.
He doesn't suffer fools, gladly.
Well, it took BBT to number 3.
Oh, number 2 if you include South America.
You don't think he's too young, do you?
Hard to say. It's a lot to take on. There are some very big decisions to be made.
I think he's proved himself in that department, don't you?
That's a new Granada, isn't it?
Of course. It's the 2.9 gear saloon.
The new Ford Granada. Let them know you've arrived.
Mary had a little lamb. You should have seen it frolicking. And every time it ran away...
The Clean's Active Mouthguard reinforces brushing, killing germs and bacteria that can cause plaque and bad breath.
It came back 2 days later.
Antibacterial McLean's Active Mouthguard cleans the foulest of mouths.
Hi.
Hi.
Was it something I said?
Just business.
Long?
A month.
That's long.
I called round last night when you had company.
You mean my brother? Came round for coffee.
Brother.
Golden roasted, richer, smoother, Nescafe Gold Blend.
I forgot to say, I'll be in New York.
I hope you remember to take some gold blend with you.
So you might like to know I'm staying at the Plaza.
Because we've been recycling your empties for years, our bottles have always been green.
I wouldn't do that if I were you, Rupert.
If the wind changes, you'll stay like it.
Well, I'd get rid of him, love. You hang on to him, he's all right.
I think you should make a nice cup of tea.
It seems that everyone in the world has plenty of advice to give.
Take the money away for the box. 19 bucks. You're going to take the money. Oh!
The question is, which is the right advice? And where can you go to get it?
Oh, no, please, it's there something in my eye.
Try pulling your eyelid down as far as it'll go.
And then blowing your nose.
I wouldn't pull that trigger if I were you.
At the Halifax, we've probably given more advice on mortgages than any other lender. With all that experience and our wide range of plans and options, we believe we can give you the best advice on your mortgage.
Try pulling your eyelid down as far as it'll go. Then blowing your nose.
The Halifax, for mortgage advice you can bank on.
Whatever you've been working at, work it off with an instant electric shower. All the hot water you need whenever you need it. Shower Electric.
You're watching Channel 4 on Tuesday the 10th of July. Now we travel to the city